Yo, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Crafty YouTube channel. Before I get this video started, I want to address something. I've been getting a lot of messages, comments like, where'd Crafty go from TikTok? I can't find him. Where'd he go? He's not posting anymore. Well, let me explain. I will still be posting on TikTok. That's not what I'm saying. I am simply going to be putting more effort into my YouTube channel than I will be my TikTok. I feel like on YouTube, you guys can get to know me better. I can stream to you guys. There are so many more possibilities for what I can do with you guys than there is on TikTok. Without further ado, yesterday was the trade deadline, or maybe a day before yesterday, because this video might not get edited in time, you know. And this trade deadline was considerably underwhelming. I gotta crack a Sprite for this. Even though it was an underwhelming trade deadline, definitely very underwhelming, I'm going to be going through every trade that I can at least remember or have written down, and then I'm going to be grading it like you were in school. You know, like A+, B+, C+, D+, F regular. I've never heard of an F+. The first trade of the day was the Cavs and the Nuggets. The Cavs gave up JaVale McGee, and the Nuggets gave up Isaiah Hartenstein and 2 second-round picks. The Shaq in a full MVP is back in Denver, y'all. Now, when talking about the Nuggets before this trade lacked a backup center besides Bobo. And Bobo's a decent backup center, don't get me wrong, but he is not very strong and he gets bullied in the paint too often. His natural position is a power forward. So picking up another center doesn't only give Bobo a chance to play his natural position of the 4, but now they have another center who is a solid defender and an NBA champion to come off the bench. Now, I will be the first person to mention that JaVale McGee was definitely not the finals MVP or anything, but regardless, he's an NBA champion and he knows what it takes to win an NBA championship. That's a very underrated factor in basketball, and the Nuggets just simply didn't have that. Now, it might sound like I'm overrating this trade because, you know, it's just JaVale McGee, but I think this is going to help the Nuggets a lot come playoff time. Overall, I say the Nuggets are going to get a B on this trade. It's not like blockbuster, but it's going to be pretty helpful. The Cavs, on the other hand, get 2 second-rounders and Isaiah Hartenstein. Now, Isaiah is a solid 4 and 5 player who the Cavs could possibly build around in the future, considering he is young, or use him for assets later in the future. The Cavs are obviously not in win-now mode, and JaVale McGee was kind of old. Isaiah Hartenstein is a lot younger. I think it was a solid trade for him. I give him a C+. Not as great for them as it was for the Nuggets, but it was still pretty good for him. Now we have the trade that I don't think anyone was expecting to be made. You know what I'm talking about. The Magic and the Bulls. Bulls gave up Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., and 2 first-rounders for Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu. Let me state the obvious. Nikola Vucevic is an all-star. Alright, so let's talk about the Magic first. The Magic are clearly not in, you know, the world's best position. They're like right in between win now and rebuild. What I'm saying is they were the 8th seed last year. Now, considering that the Nets have been made in their conference, I think it's the best for them to go into rebuild mode. And obviously, I think that's what they're doing, so I think this trade was actually pretty good for him. Wendell Carter Jr. is a young player with loads of potential, and I think that's going to be awesome for him. And then you go to Otto Porter Jr., who made the contracts work. Do I need to change my camera angle? I'm changing my camera angle. And not to mention, to go along with those 2 players, they got picks. For the Magic, I'm going to assume that they are going into rebuilding mode, and this is a solid B rating. Now for the Bulls. Thank God Zach LaVine is getting some help around here. Alright, so they got a solid all-star in Nikola Vucevic to fill the center position, and they got a really nice veteran in Al-Farouq Aminu. The defense from Al-Farouq Aminu is going to help them so much, considering this is a team that lacks perimeter defense, and that's kind of what Al-Farouq Aminu can do. And I don't even need to mention how useful an all-star Nikola Vucevic is going to be for them. Enough said, the Bulls get a solid A+ on this trade. Works out great for them. And yet, the Magic are not done. The Magic ended up trading Evan Fournier for 2 second-round picks to the Boston Celtics. Let's talk about what the Celtics actually receive in this, because I think it's kind of underrated. The Celtics get a super nice scoring presence off of the bench in Evan Fournier. Before the trade deadline, he was averaging 19.7 points per game and had a 31-point game 2 games prior. And another scorer is exactly what the Celtics needed. I love this. And considering they only gave up 2 second-round picks for Evan Fournier, they get a solid A-. Magic gave up kind of a big contract and got 2 picks out of it. I gotta give them a B+. Like I said, I'm considering the rebuilding. There's not much to talk about. I can't talk about what players they got because they didn't get any players. Now, the Bulls and the Wizards ended up making a trade. The Bulls traded Daniel Gafford and Chandler Hutchison for Mo Wagner and Troy Brown. Man, I can't speak. Now, the Bulls replaced 2 very underwhelming players, in my opinion, for Mo Wagner, who will go great along Nikola Vucevic. Troy Brown hasn't shown any sort of crazy production, but he can run the 2 and 3, which I think is going to be really solid for this team. Not to mention, he's also kind of young. He could turn into a solid piece eventually, maybe. I give the Bulls a C+. It was an underwhelming trade, but it helps them out. The Wizards, though, they get Daniel Gafford and Chandler Hutchison. Chandler has literally fallen out of the Bulls rotation, which I think is saying a lot, by the way. And Daniel Gafford is like a pretty solid young rebounder. I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic. He plays more of an old-fashioned center role, which is kind of outdated in today's league, but maybe that'll help out the Wizards. I don't know. In my opinion, the Wizards should have taken the same exact approach the Bulls were taking in this situation, which is, let's get our stars some help.
Help me! Help me.
It doesn't seem like they wanted to do that in the trade deadline, so I'm kind of confused what their game plan is here. The Wizards have 2 amazing players, yet cannot win a game. This was underwhelming. I give them a D. And the Nuggets are back, and they want to win right now. Obviously, I mean, they're in the playoffs. The Nuggets and Magic, the Magic keep trading people. They agreed to a deal that gives up Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and a first-round pick for Aaron Gordon. I hate trains, bro. Now let's talk about what the Magic gave up and received. They gave up Aaron Gordon for a young prospect in RJ Hampton and the sus god that is Gary Harris. Right now, I really like what they got going on. They have like a Thunder-like approach, which is get as many picks as possible and maybe some young players while we're at it. For what they're going for, this trade was perfect for them. They got rid of an older guy. He's not even really that old, but he's not someone you're going to want to build around for the future. And they got RJ Hampton and a pick. I'll give them a solid B+ for this, especially for what they're going for. I like it. Now the Nuggets. I am so happy for the Nuggets, man. Now Gary Harris's value in production has been decreasing over time with that team as Jamal Murray's kind of been like, hey, I'm good. They already had a solid roster, but now they've added another solid aspect to this roster without even giving up that much. Now, Aaron Gordon is more than just a dunker. I don't feel like I should have to say that, but I think I do at the same time. Now, he's definitely no all-star, but for someone who could play the 3 through 5, this man is a pretty solid wing defender. I think he's going to have a really strong defensive presence on this team, which is going to help quite a bit. Not to mention that if he gets a solid dunk in the playoff, that is going to switch the momentum. I'm going to love that, man. The Nuggets? You get an A for that one. The Heat and Kings made a trade, which I did not expect to happen. Now, the Heat gave up Mo Harkless and Chris Silva for Nehemiah Bjelica. Now, personally, I'm not quite sure what the Kings were trying to gain from this. Mo Harkless is averaging 1 point per game, and Chris Silva just isn't that good. This is an F for the Kings. Like, they gave up way too much. Now, I know Bjelica isn't averaging like 20 points per game or anything, but he's a really solid player. And they got a combined 5 points per game for him. Now, the Heat added a super versatile and a super valuable piece in Nehemiah Bjelica. His role was slowly decreasing in Sacramento, and I believe that his role in the Heat will be bumped up just a little bit. He's a solid 4 who's going to be able to stretch the floor for him a little bit more. Now, I don't think it's game-changing, but I think it's a B+. Ha-ha! The Blazers and the Raptors trade! The Raptors give the Blazers Norman Powell. If you guys have been watching like my Nothing But Net series, that will be coming back eventually, I promise. You know I love Norman Powell, and I think he's super underrated. So the Blazers get Norman Powell, and they gave up Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. In my opinion, the Blazers dominate this trade by a long shot. Norman Powell is a prolific scorer and a decent defender. This is exactly what the Blazers and Damian Lillard need on that team. He'll be a really solid 6-man behind CJ McCollum, and I think this could possibly put the Blazers, hear me out, into contention in the West. Maybe I'm overrating it. I'm giving it an A, maybe an A+. Now the Raptors, they gave up so much for so little in return. Listen, I like Gary Trent. I like him a lot. But Rodney Hood is just not the same Rodney Hood that was averaging 15 points per game in Utah. They get a D+. Like, it's not a horrendous trade, but it's not good for him. Now, the Hawks and the Clippers. Why am I singing? The Hawks send Rajon Rondo to the Clippers for Lou Williams and 2 second-round picks. I really like this trade for both sides, but let's talk about the Hawks. For the Hawks, I think Lou Williams is going to be a much better 6-man than Rajon Rondo could have been for that team. Not to mention that I think Lou Williams matches Trae Young's playstyle a little bit more, so will be a better mentor for Trae Young. Now, with that being said, they kind of suffer with defense at the point guard position, though. Not an amazing trade, not a terrible trade, it's a C, just like all my grades in high school. Coming into the trade deadline, the Clippers really wanted Lonzo Ball. Now, I'm assuming once the Pelicans said, yeah, you know, I think we're going to keep Lonzo Ball, that's when they were like, you know what, let's go get someone who has a very similar play style, Rajon Rondo. I also believe that in the playoffs, Rondo's going to take it up to another step, you know, like Rondo kind of does, and his playmaking will be absolutely crucial for the Clippers in the playoffs. I give this a B- for the Clippers. I think if I had to choose a winner for this trade, it's the Clippers. That's just facts. Okay, so you know how I said the Heat were going to come back? Yeah, the Heat weren't done. The Heat sent Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and a 2022 pick swap to the Rockets for Victor Oladipo. Let's talk about the Heat first. I gotta talk about the Heat. This was a huge pickup for the Heat. Now, Oladipo has been struggling, but also his team can't win a game, so can you really blame the guy? Victor is a super solid player who can play the 1 through 3 and will actually increase the offensive production of the Heat. Not to mention, he's gonna take the Heat up another defensive level along with Jimmy Butler. This makes me want to drink a Sprite. I'm not sponsored. I just really like Sprite. Now, it's also been speculated that Victor Oladipo really wanted to end up on the Heat, so his morale is gonna go up like crazy. When you're happier, you play better. It's facts. With all that being said, I do think the Heat gave up a little bit too much, so I'm gonna give them an A-. It's a great pickup, but they probably could have negotiated for just a little bit less. Now, the Rockets, it's kind of hard for me to be happy with them right now. They do get a great defender in Avery Bradley, even though he is getting up there in age, and they get a floor-stretching center in Kelly Olynyk. Now, it's obvious they won't be winning anytime soon, so I don't really think this was a very important trade for them. I do like that they got rid of Oladipo, though. He does deserve a chance to, you know, be on a decent team. I think Kelly Olynyk is also gonna be super great behind Christian Wood, well, once he comes back. And then you throw in some some intense defense with a, championship mindset in Avery Bradley, I guess I can give him a C+ for this. But the championship mindset's not going to matter on a team that's not going to win more than like 20 games. The Warriors sent Brad Wanamaker to the Hornets for a second-round pick and some money. Now, the Hornets get a really solid bench player, in my opinion. Now, Brad Wanamaker was not super effective on the Warriors, but I don't really blame him for that. The system just simply wasn't built for a Brad Wanamaker kind of player. I think for the rest of the season, Brad Wanamaker is going to be a super solid backup behind Terry Rozier because, LaMelo Ball's not going to be playing. They gave up almost nothing. I give him a C. I mean, they got Brad Wanamaker for practically nothing. I can't give him a bad grade. And for the Warriors, they gave up Brad Wanamaker and got a second-round pick and some money. I guess since Brad wasn't working well for him, I give them a C too. It's kind of like an even trade. So, remember Mo Wagner? Yeah, he didn't stay on the Bulls. He was later sent to the Celtics for Daniel Tice. And the last trade that makes me the happiest, and I think you know why. The Mavs give up James Johnson, a second-round pick, and Wesley Iwundu for J.J. Redick and Nicolo Melli. Now Melli is a very old second-year player. He's 30 in his sophomore season. But in his first season, we saw flashes of him being like a decent 3 and 4 shooter. And then JJ Redick, who's just a solid veteran presence who's got a strap. Also, it's another guy named JJ since we lost JJ Barea. I love that the Mavs brought in 2 players who notoriously can shoot. Now, granted, both are in shooting slumps, but I think that has a lot to do with their role being decreased. And I love this for the Mavs because they can simply not have Luka and Tim Hardaway Jr. taking every three-pointer. That just doesn't work. So, I love the pickup. I give it a biased B+. Now, for the Pelicans, they got a pick and a very physical and strong player. That being James Johnson, if you didn't catch on. Wesley Iwundu is just kind of like there. He's like a decent defender. He's kind of lengthy, so I guess that'll work out for him. I think personally they gave up too much. Once again, biased. Totally biased on this one. But I'm glad they got some strength and some length. I give them a C+. Let me know what you guys thought about my ratings. Would you give some of them different grades? Was I completely biased about the Mavericks? Please let me know. Thank you guys for watching. I love you. God loves you. Crafty is out.